Cardinal Turkson is first prefect diocesary for promotion of integral human development. Have you got a shorter version of that? That's a long, long title. Anyway, I've given you the full title. He's concerned here at the Vatican with the issues of integral human development. Ambassador and Minister. So let me go through several issues. Again, I heard that you can't tweet at the moment or you can't send messages because there's a Wi-Fi problem. If you can use 4G, we'll find a way around this, but we realize it is a problem. You were one of the key contributors to the Pope's encyclical on the environment, which we were having highlighted earlier. On balance, how important is the role that water has in this document?
On the water, thanks in the first place for the opportunity to share in this brilliant discussion this afternoon. Now, water is very crucial. Since the encyclical is about the environment, it's about ecology. There's no discourse or talk about ecology that does not include water. And, just to think about the very many attempts to go to space and find other planets, one of the crucial things they've been looking for is water. There's water on the planet. And where you can find water, you can find signs of life. So water is very crucial to this. When the encyclical begins, the Pope, having started on a note of prayer, identifies water as a very revered element that Pope Francis, St. Francis, talked about a lot. Then he goes into a central part of his encyclical. If you want, reading the encyclical with the three things about see, judge, and act, when he gets to the first part about seeing, trying to survey the situation of the environment, water then gets presented as one of the elements on the threat. And the presentation of that you have presented variously this afternoon is basically in two keys, in terms of security and safety. Security in terms of access to water, how much water there is available to people, how many people can have access to it, and in terms of safety in the quality of water that people have. How water, which is so crucial to life, at the same time can be so disease-bearing that at a certain point it's not even safe. So the two elements are then the crucial elements that the Pope discusses. Then he concludes by looking, as a pastor, looking at even the use of water in some church rituals, and sacraments, baptism, and all of that, and goes into the depth of that.
But what we've been hearing about already is the much sharper nexus that there is, whether it be water, energy, agriculture, industry, urbanization. Everything is coming to a crunch, which you recognize, and you recognize the competition for this. How can the church now play a role in this? Because after all, you have missions in virtually every large area where this is a problem in different levels. But what role can you have in harmonizing what is essentially becoming not just a tension of conflict, but a tension within a community? Who's got water and who hasn't, particularly as populations are growing so fast?
No, there is. We've always talked about things that we identify as common good. Common good is something that we all aspire for, something that is conducive to our experience and sense of dignity. So first, I think we want to spread the message, tell and convince people that water belongs to those things that we refer to as common good of humanity. It's something that belongs to all. As a resource of nature, we say also that there is a principle about the universal destination of the goods of the earth. Everything that is created or belongs to the earth is meant for the use of all of us. And so we need to recognize also that. So parting with this sense that...
But there are many who don't recognize that it's there for all of us. There are many who want to exploit it and steal it.
That's happened before. That's happened before. There is an example I can cite.
It doesn't justify it now, though, does it?
It doesn't justify it, but it's happened before. Those of you from the United States, especially from the eastern part, you probably know about the story of the Boston Common. Boston Common is an instance in the history of Boston where people identify a patch of land, green land that they deserve to reserve, so that everybody who has cattle can send his cattle to come and graze there. That was a common. Then people realized that if they brought more cattle, they can have their cattle graze more. And so people began to cheat. And people beginning to cheat just meant that the Boston Common then could not serve the purpose for which it was designated. So yes, the very many interest areas and demands on water are very many. It's for energy, it's for agriculture, it's for human consumption, it's for all kinds of things. How can we then ensure that it's accessible equally in terms of equality and equity to all?
I was going to say, though, do you, at whichever level we're talking, do you see yourself, it as part of a mission now in future, to mediate and to find ways of creating conciliation if there is this new level of tension simply because of the volume of demand?
Water has always been a source of tension. It's always been an instrument even in war. In the past, in antiquity, when people wanted to conquer other countries, one of the first things they did was cut their water supply, forcing them to subjugation or subjection and all of that. So water now in the free world is also a source of conflict. When it's not accessible to some others because some other groups, you make use of it more. Take the example of the River Nile. The River Nile, starting from Uganda, arrives in Egypt. Egypt depends so much on the River Nile that it will not easily tolerate any action on the Nile which will compromise the arrival of water in Egypt. And so it becomes necessary then to form a committee, a commission of all the countries along the River Nile to regulate use of activities and so that everybody can have a share to it.
But where does the church see itself in that process of mediation and conciliation, rather than having to try and reconcile deep tensions which have been generated by water?
We've always sought to, this afternoon there's been a lot of talk about education. We've always sought to do that and to educate not simply about the use of water, but educate on the principles of social existence. We need to recognize that human beings were created for coexistence, to live together, and to live together peacefully just simply means that we need to recognize certain basic principles and rights. If you say people do not recognize common good as a principle to guide their lives and all, how can we live and ensure that everybody lives with dignity and all without recognizing that this is a good that all of us share in or can have access to? So our education is not essentially or basically educating people about good habits, and that comes in, but it's essentially to recognize certain basic principles underlying human coexistence. That is what we need to start off with.
That is a big ask, though, isn't it, given the big commercial demands on water, the existential demands on water, and frankly, we were hearing from Fred about the potential for disruption there, the speed at which even a mobile phone can create new emotions about water, right, which is far faster than your church can move.
No, not quite.
So are you saying priests can tweet as fast as anyone else?
Oh, priests tweet? I know of a pastor who, when he gets up on the pulpit to preach, he asks the young people to get off your phones and begin to tweet. And that's a way of getting them connected and staying alive through his sermon. So it can be used, that can be done.
Can you see that applied to the water challenge?
No, but the issue of water challenge is a more serious, here it's a subject matter of a conference and all of that. But to recognize that the human body has a big component of water. Everything that we cultivate and develop on the earth has water, whether it's meat, whether it's vegetables, whatever. Water is so very basic and crucial that we need to recognize certain basic principles that need to underlie and regulate our access to and use of water. When, in the absence of that, reducing water to a mere commodity, that then becomes subject to the laws of the market. We play then into the hands of money and economy, and we cannot get anywhere with that. So the thing is to recognize first the basic sense of human dignity, which we all have, and the need to protect that, ensuring common access to those type of things which are very basic to human existence.
Cardinal, are you just prepared, because Wi-Fi isn't working in here terribly well, does anyone want to ask a question, because we've heard from the other Cardinal and the Archbishop as well. Does anyone want to come in with a question about the role of the Church in this, and particularly the kind of mission that the Cardinal has. I've got a couple more questions, but don't accuse me of not opening it up. Anyone want to come in quickly? I don't see anyone. Yes, please. I think we can get a microphone to you. I'm not putting you under pressure, but I want you to feel that you can also have access.
No, that's fine.
Would you like to tell us who you are?
My name is Marilyn Gordonier, and I'm from Laurel Springs School and USA Club of Rome. And I just wanted to say, I thought that what you said was brilliant in terms of using the pulpit to actually activate the youth, and that the youth then begin to communicate via social media. And I think that this is a movement that hasn't been utilized but could be more greatly utilized. And I think you're really onto something. So I just wanted to commend you for a very, very wonderful way of reaching out and touching the world in ways that are multidimensional.
Anyone else, quickly? Because let me pick up on that, because that's a challenge. An encyclical can be drafted here at the Vatican and can be worked on, but ultimately it's about who consumes it, particularly the next generation. And about the way in which you now do this here at the Vatican across the road. I've got someone over here as well. Sure. I'll come to you in a moment. I'm just asking the question.
So, now basically we've been talking about communication and improvement upon communication methods and processes and all, and we try to do a lot of that with this latest encyclical. Knowing and recognizing that when the encyclical gets out, bishops were going to be the first ones to be asked to comment on the encyclical. We try to prepare bishops for the arrival of the encyclical way ahead of time. Every bishop around the world got a summary of the encyclical. He got examples of cases that they could cite to support elements in the encyclical, and then got a small tweet from the Pope himself inviting them all to come on board. So every bishop around the world was well prepared for the publication of this encyclical. So they could prepare their conferences, press conferences, and everything the moment the encyclical came out.
For those of us who don't actually read the Pope's tweet, is he the real Pope Francis? No, I'm serious. What does he tweet as?
No, I think it's Pope Francis. It is.
Okay.
You know, Francis,
no,
yeah.
some around the world like to call themselves the real, but that's
no.
another story, please. You've got the microphone. We're going to be very quick and then go to dehydration coffee.
Hello.
Please.
My name is Gwendolyn Hull-Smith, and I'm from the Independent Republic of Vermont in the United States, where Bernie Sanders is still president. I was very interested in your comment near the end of your talk about how one of the barriers to water being available to all is its commodification, which also speaks to the economic assumptions that we have around the use and pricing of water in an economy that's run on a debt-based source of money.
Thank you.
And I'm just wondering if you have any comments on that.
And could we swing the microphone round over here quickly, Chris? Thank you. Cardinal. Just
yes, commoditization is a crucial challenge to availability access to water. In the sense that, water, fresh water, potable water is always in short supply around the world. And there have been cases where people, using satellite, have identified huge underground reserves of water. And while on the surface it appears to be a desert, they go and make acquisitions, knowing what is down there on the underground water. It's all attempt to control this and to be able to precisely render it as a big commodity to make profit and all from. It's a thing, therefore, that we wish, the minister's ambassador talked about policies and all of that to protect and ensure this. We think, for example, that water is such a basic human need. In point of fact, since 2010, the UN is trying to push for its recognition as a right. Okay, while it is clearly recognized as a right in the legislation, UN regulation about children, it is not quite openly formulated and recognized as a right on UN level, for which we're pushing. When that is the case, then the government policies about water should recognize that it's essentially a right, not to be rendered as a commodity. Mm-hmm. Sometimes the argument is that to make water available and accessible, we need a company to run the water supply. That may be true, but if a company is needed to run the water supply and make it accessible to everybody, then we should be up to the government to take care of the company costs, but not citizens so that some can be deprived of water.
Well, one sobering fact today in Britain, the water company which supplies London with water has been fined £20 million for poisoning the water. So there's a downside to companies. One final thought, please, and then we'll have coffee.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Johan Geli from the Swiss Confederation. I would like to have more key principle behind the role of the church. You were speaking about common goods, water as a common goods, water as a basic human needs. What else and why?
What else can we present water as?
As a key principle regarding the role of the church.
Key principles.
Key principles of what? The church social principles? The role of the church. We will start with who the human person is, who depends and needs water. And then our point is about its dignity. That cannot be compromised, that needs to be respected. Dignities play out in the search of human rights. Human rights are manifestations and ways of realizing the dignities of people. And when that is the case, then the very many elements in society would help people realize their rights and dignities come up. And so we would say that created to coexist in society, it's so that together we can push for our common good. And water is one of these common goods. That living in society, we can act together to protect and to make available to all. Essentially, there is a certain amount of skepticism about whether all of this is possible. We've had proof lately that before certain global common goods, our world is capable of coming together in global solidarity to achieve that which is a global common good. We came together, the SDGs. It's an instance of the world coming together to pursue a global common good. When the world gathered in Paris, it was a manifestation of that. When you went to Addis Ababa to find funds to support development, it was an illustration of that. And lately, you've gone to Morocco. So our world is capable of global solidarity action whenever it finds itself before a global common good. And that, I think, is the thing that we need to push and encourage people to come on board with.
Cardinal, thank you. That's a moment of optimism, or an aspiration of optimism, given that many people are pretty pessimistic about the world coming together at the moment. So thank you very much indeed.
Okay. Thank you.